It's a beautiful Saturday morning, just after 9 o'clock in the morning, and I'm near Lake Sampsonvale in a huge conservation area. And today I want to talk about photographing a tree in a different perspective. Quite a few landscape photographers like photographing a single tree. I'm not talking about photographing a forest area. I'm talking about just photographing a tree, like these images here. These are beautiful images. Whether you photograph a dead tree in a panoramic format or just a single tree with the sun shining on it, images like this are beautiful. But have you ever thought about photographing a tree in a different perspective? And I mean up close and personal. This is what we're going to talk about today. Photographing a tree and getting up close and personal to our subject. I'm beside a tree. But look at it. Look at all this bark here. It is just so amazing. We've got bright areas, we've got dark areas, we've got bark peeling off. Now, if you're just starting your journey into photography, into landscape photography, and you want to practice sort of thing, this is an ideal thing because I'm just in aperture priority. I have auto ISO because the light is changing all the time. I could be photographing the shade, I could be photographing the sun, and the aperture you use depends on how much detail you want. Most of the time, we really want to isolate. So I'm going to shoot between f4.5 and around f5.6. You can see this tree sort of bends around. If you want all the detail on this side here, then you might have to go to f8 or f11. All that's going to do is just increase your ISO. But it doesn't matter. Modern cameras are so good at dealing with high ISO. So let's take a couple of photos and I'll show you. The first one we'll take is just in portrait orientation. I've zoomed in, I'm at f5. Now let's take one in landscape orientation. The reason I say I like shooting with a fairly wide open aperture like f4.5 or f5 is that if I'm shooting in landscape orientation like that, and I have a little bit of background here, shooting with a very wide open aperture means you're just going to get blur on the side here. You're not going to see detail. If you're shooting at f11, I'll crank it up here to f11. Let's take another one. Let's look at the difference. So this is f5 and this is f11. Can you see the difference? Let's look at the difference between portrait orientation and landscape orientation. So this is portrait orientation and this is landscape orientation. But remember, you are the master of your journey. Even if you're starting your journey in photography, don't let people dictate the sort of photos that you want to take. If you don't like a landscape, or if you don't like a portrait, I'm talking about 6x4 in landscape or in portrait, you can shoot in 8x10, or you can shoot a crop of 1:1, which will really highlight the area that you want. For example, if I come over here and I can see all this beautiful detail here, I'm going to take a photo in portrait. I'm going to set my camera to shoot on a 1:1 crop. I can do this in my camera, but if your camera can't do this, you just shoot in 6x4 portrait orientation and then you just crop it to 1:1. Let's do that. Look at this image here. I've cropped this as 1:1. It really highlights this area. 2.5 years ago, when we were traveling around Tasmania with my wife's parents who live in Thailand, and we were at Cataract Gorge, and I'd taken a few photos and I really didn't find it interesting for me. It wasn't really something that sort of grabbed my attention. My wife and my in-laws decided to take a walk along the track, and I was just walking around the area of the cafeteria, and what did I notice? All these big trees. And I looked at them and I go, wow, what about I photograph these trees up close and personal? Can you see how each tree is different? And this is such an amazing thing. And really it got me thinking like, you know, trees are just like humans. Every single human has a different trait, and every single tree has a different trait. Sometimes photographing trees up close and personal gives you a different perspective. Now I've been walking around this area, and here are some photos of some trees that I've taken up close and personal. Now grab my phone out here, look at this one here. This is an ironbark tree. It is such a gnarly bark. This one here I've cropped has a 1-to-1. And look at this gum tree here. There's hardly any bark on it, but the tree itself has got all these dimples in there and it looks so nice. Now look at this one here. Something's happened to this tree and there's sap now pouring out of the tree. It just looks like a lava flow. These are the sort of images that you've got to think about. Not every photo that you take of a tree up close and personal is going to work out the way that you wanted it to. That is just a fact of life. Like in landscape photography, like in wildlife photography, not every photo of, let's say, a sunset is going to work out the way I wanted to. Or if I take a bird in flight, I mightn't get that perfect image of the wings outspread. The wings could be sort of hunched up. That's just a fact. So don't be let down when you take a photo and you think like, wow, that's just going to look great. And you get home and you edit it and you're like, it didn't work out. Learn from your mistakes. Look at this beautiful gnarly tree. Now let's say I only took it in landscape orientation and I look at the image and you're like, I really like that. But you don't take one in portrait orientation like this. And you get home and you look at it and you go like, why didn't I take it in portrait orientation? And I hope this has given you a new idea. You know, like even if you've been photographing landscapes for a long time, sometimes we get stuck in a rut. I get stuck in a rut, but this is how I get out of a rut. I try to think of different ways to photograph my subjects. I'm just talking about using your camera and just a kit lens, because the lens that I have on my Nikon Z6II was a kit lens for the old digital SLRs. It's the Nikon 24-85. Not an expensive lens at all, but it suits me fine. So don't think that you need special gear. Have you ever thought about photographing a tree up close? And even if you're in a foresty area, look at this image here that I took at O'Reilly's a few years ago. And it was just a beautiful tree trunk. And then I thought about, hang on, how about if I get really close and just get all the details of these roots coming out? Look at it, it's just amazing. I hope this video has given you some ideas of a different way to photograph a tree. If it's helped you, give it a big thumbs up. Stay safe, enjoy your photography, and I'll see you next time.